Chapter 1. Catcher in the trash. I was jolted awake by a piece of chalk bouncing off my forehead. A sharp sting, followed instantly by the roaring laughter of the entire classroom, dragged me violently out of that hospital room, the one smelling of sterile bleach and echoing with desperate sobs. Chase Carter, were you out robbing houses last night? The SATs are 3 months away. Could you do us all a favor and try not to tank the school's average? Mr. Henderson's signature chain smoker rasp exploded in my ears. I blinked in a daze, my gaze cutting through the dancing chalk dust, sweeping past rows of fresh, youthful faces until it locked dead onto the window seat in the third row. That back. Her posture was perfectly straight, her dark hair pulled into a simple, low ponytail, exposing a sliver of pale, slender neck. The morning sun filtered through the window, bathing her in a halo of light. Elena Vance, my wife, or rather, the foolish woman from my past life who got dragged into the mud by a piece of trash like me, ultimately working herself into an early grave before she even turned 30. My heart seized, squeezed by an invisible fist so tight I could barely breathe. Instinctively, I wanted to scream her name. I wanted to rush over, hold her, confirm she was still warm. I needed to know she hadn't yet ruined those hands. Hands meant to draft blueprints and sketch masterpieces, scrubbing greasy diner plates just to pay off my debts. But I held back, because she turned around. It was a face still untouched by the harshness of life. Cool, clean, and striking. She tilted her head slightly, her gaze sweeping over me with sheer indifference. There was no love and no hate. Just the calm detachment reserved for a hopeless burnout. Yes, exactly. This is how it should be. In my last life, right around this time, I was hounding her like a stray dog in heat. I used my self-righteous version of devotion, cornering her at her locker, bringing her breakfast, physically fighting off any guy who looked her way, to forcibly pluck this golden girl from her pedestal. I thought I was a romantic hero, but I only destroyed her. She was supposed to be an Ivy League prodigy, a brilliant architect. Instead, because of an assault charge I caught, she ripped up her college acceptance letter to pay my bail and ended up wandering the bottom of the city with me. Chase, back of the class. Now, Mr. Henderson was still barking. I took a deep breath, forcing down the acidic burn in my chest. I stood up slowly, my movements carrying a hint of the street-hardened swagger from my past life. You got it, Mr. H, I heard myself say. My voice was gravelly, flippant, completely obnoxious. I didn't grin and whistle at Elena like I had in my previous life. Instead, I grabbed my backpack, didn't spare her a single glance, and walked straight to the last row. The desk right next to the trash can. The smelliest, most abandoned corner of the room. The perfect spot for a piece of garbage like me. As I sat down, I noticed Elena's pen pause for a fraction of a second. She seemed slightly caught off guard, but I quickly averted my eyes, pulling a dog-eared Stephen King paperback from the desk cubby and dropping it over my face, blocking out the light. Elena Vance, in this life, I'm not chasing you. You stay up in the sky and be the moon. A sewer rat like me only deserves to look up at you from the dark. Chapter 2. Rusted chained for the first week of my second chance at life, I lived like a ghost haunting my own youth. I stopped showing off on the basketball court. I stopped fighting to the front of the cafeteria line to buy the frosted strawberry pastry she liked. I stopped purposely dropping my pen by her desk during study hall just to catch her exasperated profile when she handed it back. I started smoking. I'd actually quit in my last life because Elena had asthma, but now I made sure my flannel always reeked of cheap Marlboros. Whenever passing period ended, I'd be the last one dragging my feet into the room. Walking past her desk, I could distinctly see her wrinkle her nose and lean away. Good. Be disgusted. The more disgusted, the better. Friday after school, the sky broke open. The Pacific Northwest spring was always like this, relentless downpours that felt like they were drowning the world. I didn't have an umbrella. In my past life, I would have shamelessly crowded under Elena's, grinning and ignoring my soaked shoulder while dropping some cheesy pickup line. Now, I stood in the foyer of the main building, watching kids get picked up or run out into the rain in groups. Elena was still here. She stood at the edge of the crowd, clutching a clear, folding umbrella, anxiously checking her phone. I knew what she was waiting for. Her alcoholic dad. In my last life, he got a DUI on his way to get her, and drove his truck into a ditch. And I was the one who threw my jacket over her and walked 3 miles in the freezing rain to get her home. That was the turning point of our relationship. Damn it, I muttered, taking a hard drag of a cigarette until it burned near my knuckles. I couldn't play the hero this time. Absolutely not. I saw Liam Brooks walk up to her. The kid was loaded, pulled straight as, and looked like 8J. Crew model. In my last life, he was my biggest rival. If I hadn't interfered, the two of them would have been the high school golden couple. Elena, need a ride? My dad's on his way. Liam's voice was smooth, polite. I leaned back behind a concrete pillar, my heart grinding like sandpaper. Say yes. Come on, say yes. Get in his Audi, keep your shoes dry, and let your life be a smooth ride. Elena looked up, gave Liam a polite smile, and shook her head. Thanks, Liam, I'm good. My dad should. He should be here soon. Stupid girl. Your dad is passed out in a ravine right now. Frustrated, I flicked my cigarette into a puddle. Hiss. The ember died. Since Liam struck out, I had to play the villain myself. I pulled my hoodie over my head, shoved my hands in my pockets, and swaggered out into the rain. As I passed Elena, I purposely sped up, letting my shoulder accidentally slam into hers. Watch it, you're in the way, I spat coldly. Without waiting for a reaction, I plunged into the downpour. I heard a soft gasp behind me, but I didn't look back. I was terrified that if I saw her wide, startled eyes, my legs would stop working. I didn't walk home. I looped around the back of the gym to the blind spot by the bike racks. Her rusted 10-speed was parked there. I knew the chain was loose. In my last life, it snapped, which was why she was waiting for her dad in the first place. Cold rain slid down my neck, making me shiver. I crouched down, digging a wrench and a small can of WD-40 from the bottom of my backpack. My hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from fear. Fear of being caught. Fear that this tiny crumb of care would become the spiderweb that trapped her again. I expertly popped the chain off, pried the rusted link apart, blasted it with lubricant, and locked it back into place. Grease mixed with muddy water, staining my hands black. To cover my tracks, I wiped a smear of mud across her bike seat and hung a torn plastic grocery bag over the handlebars to make it look like a bully's prank. Done. I sprinted 50 yards away and hid under the awning of the maintenance shed. About 20 minutes later, Elena finally gave up waiting. She ran through the rain toward the bike racks. She saw her vandalized bike and froze. Then, pulling a tissue from her pocket, she calmly wiped the mud off the seat without a hint of disgust. She threw her leg over the frame and pushed off the pedal. The crank, which should have locked up, spun impossibly smooth. She stopped in the rain. She stood there for a long time. So long I thought she'd figured it out. She turned her head, scanning the gray sheet of rain, searching for something. I held my breath, shrinking deeper into the shadows. Finally, she rode off. Watching the faint glow of her rear reflector disappear around the corner, I looked down at my hands, coated in black grease and mud, and grinned. Ugly as hell. But if these hands can fix a road in this life, that's enough. Chapter 3, Love Letters and Strawberry Milk Senior Year, was a mind-numbing grind. To maintain my burnout persona, I slept through lectures, stared at the wall during passing periods, and copied homework from Toby, the heavy-set kid who sat in front of me. I wasn't worried. As someone who had lived this year already, I knew the SAT questions. I also knew Elena was going to get into Cornell's architecture program. So I set a goal for myself. Get into a community college automotive program a few states away in Nevada. Close enough to drive back if she ever truly needed me. Far enough to completely exit her life. The glitch in the Matrix happened on a Wednesday morning. I strolled in right at the bell, shoved my backpack into my desk, and my fingers brushed against something cold. A glass bottle of chilled strawberry milk, and a pale blue Post-it note. I froze. For a second, I wondered if I had reincarnated into the wrong timeline. In my last life, at this exact moment, Elena treated me like a biohazard. I covertly pulled the items onto my lap, hiding them under my textbook. The handwriting on the Post-it was that elegant, precise script etched into my soul. Thank you for fixing my bike. I saw you that day, even with the hood up. My blood ran cold. Damn it. Does this girl have X-ray vision? Through that torrential rain, hidden behind a shed, how the hell did she see me? And worse, this didn't make sense. Logically, even if she knew it was me, she should just think it was weird. Why buy me a drink? I glanced across the room. Elena was looking down, memorizing AP Gov flashcards, completely ignoring my side of the room. But I caught it. The tips of her ears were flushed pink. No, this is wrong. I have to kill this right now. The next second, I made a decision that felt like dragging a knife across my own chest. I stood up, dangling the unopened bottle of strawberry milk, and projected my voice across the room. Hey, Toby, did you skip breakfast? Whoever shoved this garbage on my desk must have a death wish. Sweet crap makes me sick. You want it? The classroom fell dead silent. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Elena's back go rigid. Toby took the milk, looking panicked. Chase, man, this is from that artisan dairy place. It's expensive. Drink it or toss it, I don't care. I snapped. I crumpled the blue Post-it into a tight ball, faked a jump shot, and tossed it right into the trash can by the back door. Next time someone puts their trash in my desk, I'm throwing hands. As soon as the words left my mouth, I heard a sharp snap. The sound of a mechanical pencil lead breaking hard against paper. It came from the third row by the window. For the rest of the day, the atmospheric pressure in the classroom felt suffocating. I laid my head on my desk, pretending to sleep while my heart bled out. That milk probably cost her the cash she saved for lunch. Writing that note must have taken so much courage. I'm sorry. Elena, I'm so sorry. Short-term pain is better than long-term destruction. Hate me. Think I'm scum. Just don't be curious about me. After study hall, I waited until the building was completely empty. Feeling like a thief, I crept over to the trash can. The janitor had just emptied it, but the crumpled blue paper was stuck to the bottom edge, dusted with pencil shavings. I fished it out. Carefully, I smoothed out the wrinkles. Under the dim hum of the fluorescent hallway lights, I read the words one more time. Then, I folded it and tucked it into my wallet, the place closest to my heart. Chapter 4. Allie Dog's my cold shoulder tactics seemed to work. For the next half-month, Elena didn't look my way once. She grew quieter, studied harder. Exactly what I wanted. Until that night. It was late spring, and the dropouts from the neighboring vocational school were getting bold, hanging around the transit stops to shake down high school kids. I was doing my usual routine, trailing 50 yards behind Elena to make sure she got home safe. Watching her shadow stretch under the streetlights was like re-walking the life we never got to finish. As she passed a dark, narrow alley between two brick buildings, a sharp whistle pierced the air. Well, if it isn't the valedictorian. Out late by herself. 3 guys smelling of cheap weed and stale beer stepped out of the shadows, blocking her path. My pupils dilated. I knew these punks. They had a reputation for getting violent. I didn't have a weapon, but I didn't hesitate for a microsecond. Just as Elena stumbled backward in terror, her back hitting the brick wall, I launched out of the dark. No heroic one-liners. No hosetashchen. I threw a flying kick square into the ribs of the guy in front. With a heavy thud, he slammed into a dumpster, howling. Run! I roared, never looking back at Elena. The other 2 shook off their shock, grabbed empty glass bottles from the recycling bin, and swung at me. I couldn't step back. She was right behind me. The brawl was absolute chaos. The dull thud of knuckles on bone, the sharp, blinding pain of glass glancing off my temple, the metallic taste of blood pooling in my mouth. I didn't know how many hits I took. I just swung like a rabid dog backed into a corner, grappling, biting, refusing to let go. Chase! A scream, thick with tears, shattered the noise. She didn't run. The idiot didn't run. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Hearing them, the punk swore, kicked me one last time, and bolted. My adrenaline crashed, and I slid down the rough brick wall, hitting the pavement. Blood dripped from my eyebrow, blurring my vision. Elena dropped to her knees beside me on the filthy asphalt. Her hands were shaking violently, hovering over my face, too terrified to touch my wounds. Tears fell like a broken string of pearls, splashing hot against the back of my hand. Why are you're bleeding so much? Oh God, I gasped for air, looking up at her tear-streaked face. This was the closest I had been to her since I came back. Close enough to smell her vanilla shampoo, mixed with the salt of her tears. God, I want to lift my hand, wipe her face, and tell her, don't cry, baby. I'm right here. But I couldn't. This was the ultimate out. I turned my head and spat a mouthful of bloody saliva onto the ground. Then I put on the most repulsed, annoyed face I could muster. Quit crying. You're giving me a headache. Elena's sobs hitched. She stared at me, eyes wide with disbelief. I fought through a wave of vertigo, using the wall to drag myself to my feet. I glared down at her. I've been looking for an excuse to beat the hell out of those guys for weeks. You think I did this to save you? I scoffed. Don't flatter yourself. Get out of my way. You're annoying to look at. I shoved past her, purposely swatting away the hand she reached out to steady me. The world was spinning. Every step felt like walking on marshmallows. But I had to walk away looking tough. Looking heartless. Chase Carter. Her voice behind me was trembling, but anchored in steel. You're a liar. I paused for half a beat, didn't turn around, and let out a cold laugh. Believe whatever you want. Just stay the hell away from me. You're bad luck. I stumbled out of the alley. The second I turned the corner out of her sight, my knees gave out. I collapsed next to a streetlight. Right before the darkness totally took me, only one thought crossed my mind. Good. Now she definitely hates me. My garbage life and her perfect moon are finally separated for good. Chapter 5. The wrong equation. I spent 3 days in the hospital. Mild concussion, cracked rib for stitches above my eye. Nobody came to visit. My mom had skipped town years ago, and my deadbeat dad probably didn't even notice I was gone. I welcomed the silence. When I finally walked back into school, I was mentally prepped for Elena's icy glare. I even rehearsed some venomous lines to spit at her in case she tried to thank me out of guilt. But things didn't go according to plan at all. When I walked into the classroom and pulled out my chair, I noticed my desk was spotless. Actually, it was cleaner than I left it. Stacked neatly in the center were the worksheets and notes I'd missed. And sitting right on top was a pink Yeti thermos. I froze. The kids around me were sneaking glances, their eyes filled with an unspoken, gossipy tension. Who put this here? I scowled, my voice hard. Nobody answered. Just then, Elena walked into the room holding a stack of graded papers. As she passed my aisle, she stopped. The entire class stopped breathing. She didn't lower her head and avoid me like before. She didn't treat me like a biohazard. She turned, faced me squarely, and looked into my eyes. Those usually cool, detached eyes were burning with a stubborn, defiant fire I couldn't comprehend. Drink the tea. It has honey and ginger. It's good for blood loss. Her voice wasn't loud, but in the dead silent room, it echoed. I felt a wire snap in my brain. Elena, are you out of your mind? I hissed through clenched teeth. Did I stutter the other night? She looked at me, and the corner of her mouth ticked up into a microscopic smirk. It wasn't the polite smile of a straight-A student. It was the sly, knowing look of someone who had figured out a trick, like she was watching a clown bomb on stage. You were very clear. She took a step forward, invading my personal space. You said you just wanted to fight. You said you hate me. You said I was bad luck. She paused, her eyes dropping to the white gauze wrapped around my knuckles. But Chase, if you really hate me, why did you instinctively turn your back to shield me when they swung that glass bottle? I opened my mouth, but my throat felt glued shut. It was muscle memory. It was the instinct of man who had protected her for a decade in another life. I couldn't control it. I lied weakly, breaking eye contact. You did, Elena said with absolute certainty. She reached out and pushed the pink thermos a millimeter closer to me. And another thing, in the alley. Did you really think I didn't hear you when you passed out? My heart stopped. What did I say? Did I call her wife? Did I say I love you? She watched the panic wash over my face, and her expression softened into something I had never seen from her, tenderness and heartbreak. You said, don't be scared, Ron. She took a deep breath, and right there, in front of everyone, she dropped a bomb that shattered my entire reality. Chase Carter, I don't know what you're so terrified of. I don't know why you're pretending to be this worthless piece of trash who can't be saved. But starting today, I'm making you my project. This equation makes no sense, but I've always loved solving the hardest problems. She turned on her heel and walked back to her seat. I stood there, frozen, feeling like I'd been stripped naked in the middle of a blizzard. I gripped the warm pink thermos, a terrifying, out-of-control panic rising in my chest. It's over. She closed the loop. I had tried with all my might to push her away, but I had accidentally triggered a domino effect. To her brilliant, analytical brain, every rejection, every harsh word, just became ironclad proof. He loves me, but he feels he's not good enough. I looked out the window. The spring rain had stopped. My grand master plan to save her had derailed before it even left the station. Chapter 6. Divergent paths. The month before college commitments were due, I lived like a hunted animal. Elena didn't cry over my insults like a normal high school girl. Instead, she initiated a psychological warfare campaign that made my scalp tingle. Every morning, a hot coffee and a bagel appeared on my desk. Even if I threw it in the trash right in front of her, a fresh one would be there the next day. During lunch, she would accidentally leave her notebook on my desk, open to the exact calculus problem I had left blank on the last mock exam, annotated in red ink so thoroughly a toddler could understand it. I was losing my mind. She was forcing my hand, forcing me to admit I wasn't a burnout, forcing me to accept I had a future. But she didn't get it. I couldn't have a future. If I started climbing, I'd end up dragging her back down into the dirt. On the day we had to finalize our college portal submissions, Mr. Henderson called us both into his office. Elena's top choice was no surprise. Cornell University, College of Architecture, Art and Planning. The Holy Grail. The future she had dreamed of and lost in our past life. Staring at that printed confirmation page, I clenched my hands in my pockets so hard my fingernails dug into my palms. Finally, this time, you're on the right path. And you, Chase. Mr. Henderson sighed, tossing a blank, intent form at me. Your scores are in the gutter, but if you actually applied yourself, maybe the community college across town. I clicked my pen and didn't hesitate. I scrawled a name on the paper. Silver State Vocational. Reno, Nevada. Major, Automotive Technology. It was a grimy trade school 1,000 miles away. 2 days on a Greyhound bus. A safe distance. Far enough that I couldn't ruin her life, but close enough to the West Coast that I could disappear into the desert. Chase, are you out of your mind? Elena, who had been quiet, suddenly lunged forward, slamming her hand over mine. Her eyes were red, locked onto the name of the nowhere school. Your mock SAT scores were low, but if you cram, you could get into a state school. Why are you doing this? And it's in Nevada. I looked up at her desperate face. I ripped my hand out from under hers and slapped the form onto the desk. Back off, valedictorian. I pulled a cigarette from behind my ear, ignoring Mr. Henderson's furious gasp. I like fixing cars. I like oil and engines. I hate books. Plus, Nevada sounds fun. Nobody to nag me. I can party in the desert. You're running from me. Elena's voice shook, but she sounded absolutely certain. My fingers twitched. I let out a harsh, cruel laugh. Running from you? Get over yourself. I just want to see what else is out there. I hear the girls out west are a lot more fun. I leaned in, dropping my voice to a sleazy whisper only she could hear. Goody two-shoes like you bore the hell out of me. I'm over it. All the color drained from Elena's face. The words were too heavy. So heavy that saying them felt like driving a spike through my own ribs. But it had to be done. Only then would she let go. She slowly pulled her hand back. Okay. The light in her eyes died out piece by piece, turning into cold, gray ash. Chase, if you think this is what's best for me, then you win. Have a nice life. She turned and walked out. She didn't look back. Watching her leave Mr. Henderson's office, I felt the strength leak out of my bones. I tossed the unlit cigarette into the trash can and smiled a smile that felt like crying. A nice life? Not a chance. My life was in the mud, so yours could be in the stars. Chapter 7. 1,095 Days in the Desert 3 Years. 1,095 days. I actually managed to disappear completely. I changed my phone number, deleted my Instagram, and cut contact with everyone from high school. I played the ostrich, burying my head in the sand of a sweltering auto repair shop on the outskirts of Reno. Every day was chassis, brake pads, and used motor oil. I shaved my head to a buzz cut, my skin baked into rough leather under the Nevada sun, and a jagged scar now ran up my forearm from a slipped sheet of sheet metal. I ate gas station hot dogs with the older mechanics, drank PBR out of a cooler, and learned to talk trash with the best of them. I worked hard to become true, bottom-of-the-barrel white trash. Only I knew the truth. Every night, alone in my crappy apartment, I fired up a burner Reddit account and lurked on the Cornell student forums and her public Instagram, hunting for traces of Elena. I knew she made the dean's list. I knew her design won gold at a National Collegiate Architecture Symposium. I knew she was the most beautiful girl in her cohort, surrounded by wealthy pre-law students and brilliant tech bros. Whenever I saw those posts, I'd light a cigarette, stare at the water-stained ceiling, and feel peace. This was what my rebirth was for. As long as she was standing in the light, my rotting in the grease was worth it. But I forgot that fate has a sick sense of humor. Summer before her senior year, my shop got a call for a tow. A college volunteer group doing a cross-country build project had broken down on a mountain pass just across the California border. My boss tossed me the keys to the flatbed. Wearing a grease-stained Dickies shirt, a cigarette dangling from my lips, I rumbled up the mountain road. A brand-new Ford Transit passenger van was parked on the shoulder. A group of clean, well-dressed college kids were hanging around, taking landscape photos, completely unbothered by the delay. I hopped out and immediately slid under the undercarriage to diagnose the problem. "Excuse me, sir, how long do you think it'll take?" a clear voice called from above. My wrench hit the asphalt with a sharp clang. That voice, even mixed with the hiss of passing cars, even after 3 years, even if I'd only heard it in my dreams, I knew it instantly. I froze, paralyzed beneath the chassis. Through the gap in the undercarriage, I saw a pair of pristine white Converse and delicate, pale ankles. It was Elena. "Sir," she bent down, trying to peer under the van. I violently rolled over, putting my back to her. I grabbed a disgustingly black shop rag and aggressively scrubbed it across my face. Axle grease smeared over my nose and cheeks. I pulled my filthy baseball cap down low over my eyes and deepened my voice into a rough, throaty drawl. "Drive shaft shot. Can't fix it here. Gotta tow it." When I crawled out, I kept my head down. Moving like a fugitive, I hooked up the chains and secured the winch. "Hey, mechanic dude, you look familiar." One of the guys muttered. It was Liam Brooks. The rich kid was here too. Still chasing her, it seemed. "Everyone looks familiar to you, Liam," Elena said flatly. "Let the man work." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding and scrambled into the cab of the tow truck. But as I threw it into gear, my eyes darted to the side view mirror. My heart stopped. Elena hadn't gotten back into the Ford Transit. She was standing by the guardrail, staring intensely at my truck. The mountain wind whipped her hair back, revealing a necklace resting against her collarbone. It was a cheap silver ring. In high school, I'd twisted it out of a piece of scrap wire from shop class just to mess around and lost it. Now, it was threaded onto a silver chain, gleaming against the chest of an Ivy League scholar. I slammed my foot on the gas. The diesel engine roared, and I fled down the mountain like I was outrunning a wildfire. In the mirror, her figure grew smaller and smaller. But right before the turn, I saw her raise her iPhone. She took a picture of my license plate. Chapter 8. The Princess in the Grease Pit. I shouldn't have underestimated Elena's intelligence. She was a Cornell prodigy, not a helpless damsel in a rom-com. Give her a breadcrumb, a license plate, a shoulder profile a specific way, I held a wrench, and she'd reverse engineer the whole truth. 3 days later, I was lying on the concrete floor of the shop, wrestling with the transmission of a rusted-out F-150. The air was thick with the scream of air compressors and country music blaring from a blown speaker. "Chase, toss me the impact drill," one of the guys yelled. I reached blindly for the drill, but my fingers brushed against something soft. Leather. I opened my eyes. Standing right beside my hand was a pair of designer leather loafers. My gaze traveled up sharply creased slacks, a crisp silk blouse, and landed on a perfectly composed, stunning face. Elena stood in the middle of a graveyard of bald tires and oil drums, looking wildly out of place, like a swan landing in a landfill. The rest of the shop went dead quiet. "Holy crap, who is that? Since when do we get customers like that?" I slid out from under the truck and stood up. I didn't wipe the grease off my hands. I didn't try to adjust my filthy shirt. I just stood there, looking at her. I wanted to play dumb, but the absolute certainty in her eyes told me the act was over. "Car fixed?" she asked, her voice as casual as if she were asking for the weather. "Yeah." I pulled a crushed pack of cigarettes from my pocket, lit one, and purposely flicked the ash by her shoe. "Look, Princess, this is a garage, not a runway. If you need a tune-up, go to the front desk. If not, get out. I'm on the clock." Elena didn't flinch at my attitude. She looked around. Flickering fluorescent lights, floors stained permanently black, a fading calendar of girls in bikinis on the wall, and the smell of exhaust and cheap tobacco. This was my reality. I saw a flash of pure heartache in her eyes, but she blinked it away instantly. My car's acting up, she said. Which one? That one. She pointed out the open bay doors to a gleaming black Porsche Cayenne. Liam's SUV. I sneered. Ooh, bag yourself a sugar daddy? Congrats. I don't work on European imports. Too fancy. Wouldn't want to get my hands dirty. Chase. She said my name, cutting through the garage air. The other mechanics immediately stopped pretending to work and watched us like a tennis match. You hid for 3 years, and you chose here. She stepped closer, entirely uncaring that the oily floor was ruining her shoes. You'd rather rot as a greased monkey than answer a single text from me? Yeah. I looked her dead in the eye, weaponizing my words. This is my life, Elena. I'm a mechanic. I didn't even graduate high school. I spend every day with these guys, drinking, playing poker, and messing around with girls. I held up my hands, knuckles scarred, fingernails permanently stained black with grease, practically shoving them in her face. Look at these. They'll never be clean. They're meant to hold tires, not your drafting pencils. And they sure as hell aren't meant to hold your hand. We're not from the same planet anymore. You're Cornell royalty, future star architect. Me? I'm bottom feeder trash. I took a step back. Stop slumming it for kicks, okay? I am Busa. I don't have time to play pretend with a rich girl. I spun around, grabbed an air gun, and jammed it onto the F-150's lug nuts, pulling the trigger hard. ZRRRTT. The deafening noise drowned out everything else. I assumed she would leave. Just like 3 years ago, taking her disappointment and anger and walking out of my life. I was wrong. She didn't leave. She walked over to a stack of dry-rotted tires in the corner, pulled a copy of the Wall Street Journal from her designer bag, spread it over the rubber, and sat down. She pulled out a sketch pad and a charcoal pencil, looked at me, and started drawing. Keep working, she called over the noise of the drill. I needed a model anyway. The lighting in here is fascinating. I almost dropped the 10-pound drill on my foot. She's insane. This girl has lost her mind. Chapter 9. Home invasion. From that day on, my garage had a bizarre new mascot. Every afternoon, Elena would drive up in Liam's Cayenne, or a rental. I didn't care. She didn't talk to me. She didn't interrupt my work. She just sat in the corner on her tire throne, sketching, reading, or staring a hole through the back of my head. The guys went from shocked, to teasing, to completely used to it. Hey Chase, the missus is here. Shut up, she's a customer. I tried everything to drive her away. I took my shirt off while working, making sure I smelled like sweat and BO. I ate my lunch like an animal, talking with my mouth full of cheap chili mac. I even went to the sketchy strip mall next door, paid a manicurist $20, and had her sit on my lap while I worked on an engine block. That afternoon, the girl was sitting on my knee, giggling, and feeding me a potato chip. I chewed it loudly, shooting a defiant glare at Elena in the corner. You have to break now, right? At least you have to be disgusted. Elena set her book down. She stood up and walked straight over. The manicurist, intimidated by Elena's icy, high-class aura, shrank back. Elena reached in her purse, pulled out 2 crisp $100 bills, and set them on the hood of the car. Honey, scene's over. You can leave. The girl looked at the money, looked at my scowl, snatched the cash, and bolted. I sat there, rigid, humiliated like a kid caught in a lie. Elena, what is your problem? You think you can just throw money around to insult me? I'm not insulting you. She pulled a glass Tupperware container from her tote bag and popped the lid. The smell hit me instantly. Meatloaf, garlic mashed potatoes, and roasted green beans. Real food. Food I used to ask her to make in our past life. The diner food here is garbage. I rented an Airbnb down the street and cooked this. She handed me a fork. Chase, you can play the bad guy. You can play the deadbeat. But you can't play like you don't love me. I don't want it. I slapped the container out of her hands. Glass shattered on the concrete. The meatloaf and potatoes splattered everywhere. A dark splash of gravy hitting the hem of her pristine white skirt. Are you deaf? I roared, my chest heaving. I told you to get the hell out. I don't want your charity. Does this make you feel good? Watching the guy from high school act like a dog begging for scraps? You get a kick out of it? Dead silence in the garage. I stared at the ruined food on the floor, my heart ripping in half. Meatloaf. She cooked that with hands meant for drafting million-dollar buildings. I deserved to burn in hell. Elena looked at the mess on the floor. She was quiet for a long time. Then, She crouched down and began carefully picking up the broken glass. She wasn't crying. I wished to God she would cry. It would be better than this suffocating calm. Chase, she said softly, not looking up. Do you know what I thought about for the last 3 years? I thought maybe I just wasn't brave enough, and that's why you ran. She stood up, looking me dead in the eye, a terrifying, reckless light burning in her gaze. But now I get it. You don't hate me. You love me too much. You think you're mud, and you're terrified of getting me dirty. So, I swallowed hard, a cold dread washing over me. So, if you're so obsessed with keeping me clean, what happens if I get dirty too? Chapter 10. The swan dives into the mud. Elena wasn't bluffing. When she said she was going to get dirty, she went all in. Instead of leaving after the food incident, she walked straight over to the tool bench where my boss and the older guys were playing poker. The mechanics, who usually kept their mouths shut around her, stared with wide eyes. Hey guys, got a light? Her voice was still elegant, but the stiff way she held herself showed she was imitating a dive bar regular. She reached out, plucked a Marlboro Red from my pack on the table, and wedged it between 2 fingers that had never held a cigarette in her life. Then, she grabbed the plastic jug of bottom-shelf rot-gut whiskey the guys kept hidden and poured herself a full plastic solo cup. Whoa, easy there, sweetheart, my boss muttered. Don't call her that. I lunged forward, snatching the cigarette and the cup from her hands. Elena, are you psychotic? You can't drink this. It's practically paint thinner. Elena looked up at me, a feverish flush rising to her cheeks just from the fumes. She smiled, a smile so broken and mocking it terrified me. Chase, didn't you say this is what we drink? Didn't you say this is your life? I want to see how bad it burns. I want to know what makes you want to rot in this poison rather than look at me. Before I could react, she grabbed the cup back and took a massive gulp. Cough, cough, cough. Violent, hacking coughs doubled her over instantly. Tears streamed from her eyes as she choked, her lungs rejecting the cheap alcohol. To someone who sipped wine at Ivy League galas, this was literal battery acid. The mechanics backed away, realizing things had gone way too far. I watched her gasp for air, my insides twisting like they were being put through a meat grinder. My hands hovered over her back, trembling, but I forced them down. Don't cave. If you cave now, all the cruelty was for nothing. If you can't handle it, don't fake it. I sneer, my voice dripping with venom. This is for degenerates, not princesses playing dress up. Does one sip make you think you're down in the gutter with me? Get real. That blouse you're wearing costs more than my monthly rent. Take your car and go back to your blueprints. She wiped the whiskey from her lips with the back of her hand, her eyes glassy but locked onto mine. Blueprints? I'm done with them. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick, cream-colored envelope. She slapped it down on the greasy workbench. That's an acceptance letter and a full-ride fellowship to the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris. My pupils shrank to pinpricks. The Beaux-Arts, the absolute pinnacle for an architecture student. The dream she had talked about endlessly in her last life. Why are you showing me this? To rub it in? I gritted my teeth, my fingers shaking. No. Elena reached out, her slender fingers gripping the edges of the heavy cardstock. Re-yip. The sound of tearing paper echoed in the silent garage, deafening to my ears. She ripped the ticket to her future in half, then into quarters. She let the confetti-like pieces flutter down into the oil, sawdust, and cigarette ash on the concrete floor. I'm not going, she said, her voice eerily calm as she watched the horror consume my face. Chase, you wanted me to fly high? I'm grounding myself. I'm staying right here. I'll get an apartment across the street, work the graveyard shift at the gas station, and drink with you every night. I'm going to make you watch as I rot away piece by piece. If you won't climb out of the mud, I'll just jump in with you. Then we'll finally be a match. Right? Chapter 11. The straw that broke the camel's back. In that moment, the sky fell. In my past life, my $5,000 bail bond destroyed her Ivy League dreams. In this life, I tore myself apart trying to push her to the top, and she had just personally shredded a one-way ticket to Paris for me. Smack! My hand moved before my brain could stop it. I slapped her hand away from the remaining scraps of paper. It wasn't hard, but the crack was loud enough to make her freeze. In 2 lifetimes, it was the first time I had ever laid a hand on her. Elena, are you out of your goddamn mind? I roared, my eyes bloodshot, pacing like a trapped animal. Do you have any idea how many people would kill for that opportunity? You're using your future to hold me hostage? You think I'm touched? I think you're pathetic. I think you're a spoiled brat who doesn't respect herself. The second the words left my mouth, I wanted to cut my tongue out. I watched the light in her eyes shatter entirely. She didn't cry. She just stared at me like I was a stranger who had just gutted her. You're right. I am pathetic, she whispered, her voice gravelly. I threw away my whole life for a mechanic who doesn't give a damn about me. I'm an idiot. She swayed. Her face, already pale, turned the color of ash. Before I could process what was happening, her eyes rolled back and she collapsed backward, straight toward the sharp edge of an engine hoist. Elena. Every wall, every defense, every lie I had built shattered in a microsecond. I dove forward, throwing my hand behind her head just before her skull could crack against the steel. The sharp metal sliced a gash across the back of my hand, but I didn't even feel it. I pulled her into my chest. Her forehead was radiating heat like a furnace. A fever. I suddenly realized it had been raining all week, and she had stood outside the bay doors waiting for me. Combine that with exhaustion and a mouthful of cheap liquor. A truck. Give me a damn truck. I scooped her into my arms, screaming at the paralyzed mechanics. Who has keys? Hospital. Now. In that moment, I forgot the cold-blooded act. I forgot about staying away. I forgot about not being a burden. The only thing pulsing in my brain was pure terror. If she died, if I lost her again, my rebirth was nothing but a sick, twisted joke. Chapter 12. Surrender outside the ER room. The smell of bleach and antiseptic overlapped perfectly with the worst memories of my past life, making me shiver violently. The doctor said it was acute pneumonia triggered by exhaustion and a severe fever, exacerbated by the alcohol shocking her system. She was on an 4-drip. I sat by the hospital bed, watching her sleep. She looked so thin, thinner than she had in high school. Dark circles bruised the skin under her eyes, and her brows were pinched together in an uneasy dream. A nurse had wrapped my bleeding hand in white gauze, but the black engine grease on my knuckles remained permanent. I didn't dare touch her face. I was terrified of leaving a stain on her skin, but I couldn't stop myself. I reached out one trembling finger and gently hooked it around her pinky resting on top of the blanket. Just like high school, when she used to secretly link our fingers under the desk during history class. Chase, she mumbled in her fever dream, her voice incredibly weak. Don't send me away. I won't go to Paris. It's too far. I'm scared I won't be able to find you when I come back. My tears fell without warning. Hot, heavy drops splashing on her pale hand. I lost. I had lost completely and utterly. I thought I was making this grand, noble sacrifice. I thought I was the tragic hero saving the princess for myself. But to her, I was just a butcher, slowly carving out her heart. I pushed her away, so she broke her own wings just to prove she couldn't fly without me. If I didn't catch her, she was going to hit the ground and shatter. I'm not sending you away. I choked out, pressing my forehead against her burning palm, my shoulders shaking as I broke down. Elena, y surrender. You win. If you're so hell-bent on jumping into the fire, I'll burn with you. But in this life, I swear to God, I won't let you rot in the dirt. I don't know how long I sat there, but the sky outside the window slowly turned a bruised purple, then dawn gray. Elena woke up. Her first instinct was panic, her eyes darting around the room until they found me slumped over the edge of the bed. Her breathing slowed. Then, she felt the grip on her hand. For the first time in 3 years, I was holding on to her. You're awake? I sat up. My voice was wrecked, my jaw covered in stubble, my eyes rimmed red. I didn't look away. I didn't put on a mask of disgust. I just looked at her, my eyes stripped bare, showing nothing but absolute, desperate love and deep remorse. Elena started. She looked like she couldn't reconcile the gentle man holding her hand with the bastard who told her to get lost yesterday. Chase you. Listen to me, Elena. I cut her off, my tone more serious than it had ever been in my life. That acceptance letter to the Beaux-Arts. I'll call the admissions office. I'll email the dean. I'll forge a doctor's note, whatever it takes. You're going. Her eyes dimmed instantly, and she tried to weakly push herself up to fight me. I gently pressed her shoulder back down. Wait, let me finish. I took a deep breath, looking straight into her eyes, pronouncing every word like a vow. You go to Paris and become an architect. I stay here and build an empire. 3 years. Give me 3 years. I might be a grease monkey right now, but I know a hell of a lot more than just fixing engines. I'm going to climb out of this mud. I'm going to climb until I'm standing high enough to deserve you. I'm done running. In this life, as long as you don't throw me away, my life belongs to you. Elena lay there, staring at me, tears silently tracking down her temples. You swear? You're not lying just to get rid of me. I swear on my life. I reached out, my rough thumb gently swiping the tears from her cheek. If I'm lying, let me walk outside and get hit by a... She slapped her hand over my mouth. Don't say it. She smiled. It was a watery, exhausted smile, but it outshined the sunrise creeping through the blinds. Okay, 3 years in Paris. But Chase, if you don't come find me, I swear I'll marry some arrogant French guy just to spite you. I pulled her hand from my mouth and pressed my lips to her knuckles. The kiss tasted of sterile hospital air, bitter engine grease, 2 lifetimes of regret, and a titanium resolve. Don't you dare. You're mine. Chapter 13. Building the Ladder. The day I dropped Elena off at the airport, some cheesy pop ballad was playing over the PA system. She turned around 3 times in the security line, and right before she walked through, she ran back and threw her arms around my neck. Chase Carter, remember your promise. If you slack off, I'm coming back to Nevada to pump gas. Watching the 747 pierce the clouds, I stood by the terminal window and lit a cigarette. I didn't smoke it. I just watched it burn down to the filter. The moon flew away. Now it's time for the rat in the gutter to build a ladder to the sky. First thing I did when I got back to the shop was quit. My boss, a cheapskate, withheld half my last paycheck and called me an idiot. Where are you going to go, Chase? Flip burgers? I just smiled, took my measly cash, and walked out. I wasn't flipping burgers. I was a man with a cheat code. It was 2015. I knew exactly what was about to explode. Digital used car markets and a massive pivot to EV, electric vehicle maintenance. I had no capital, but I had skills, and I had the loyalty of the younger guys in the shop. I called in every favor I had from my shady past, scraped together loans, and managed to pool $12,000. It wasn't even enough for a down payment on a house, but it was enough to lease a failing 2-bay garage on the edge of the city. I named it Carter and Vance Auto Tech, corny as hell, but it had our names. The beginning was brutal. To save money, I was the CEO, the lead mechanic, and a janitor. I slept 4 hours a night on a cot in the office. But I wasn't the deadbeat I used to be. I studied. After wrenching all day, I drank black coffee and forced myself through dense business management books and digital marketing strategies. I saw the short-form video trend taking off, early TikTok and YouTube shorts, so I started filming myself at work. Not boring tutorials. I used my street-smart, slightly aggressive persona to drop truth bombs on the industry. Look at this flood-damaged junk, I'd say to the camera, wearing a clean, customized uniform. Elena had bought me 10 sets before she left and threatened me if I didn't change daily. Shady dealerships are selling this as lightly used. Today, I'm going to show you exactly where to look so you don't get screwed. In the videos, my buzz cut was gone, replaced by a clean fade. The delinquent sneer was replaced by a sharp, commanding confidence. Month 1, we bled money. Month 2, we broke even. Month 3, a video exposing a massive local dealership scam went viral. 2 million views. 500,000 followers. Business exploded. I couldn't handle the volume, so I poached the best guys from my old shop. I set one ironclad rule. No scams. No pseudo fake repairs. Total transparency. Anyone caught screwing over a customer gets fired on the spot. In an industry famous for ripping people off, brutal honesty became my ultimate weapon. Chapter 14. 7 time zones away, working myself to the bone was the only way I could survive missing her. For 3 years, Elena and I maintained a long-distance relationship across 7 time zones. When it was 2 a.m. for me, it was breakfast for her. I'd be eating cold takeout with hands scrubbed raw with pumice soap, while she sat by the Seine, drafting architectural models. On FaceTime, I always try to look presentable, but I knew she saw the background shift. She watched me move from the dingy back-office cot to a minimalist, high-rise executive office. She watched my wardrobe change from wholesale work shirts to custom-tailored button-downs. Most importantly, she watched the shadow of the self-loathing teenager fade, replaced by a grounded, ambitious man. "Mr. Carter, I saw the article. You opened a third location?" She asked through the screen one night. She had cut her hair into a chic bob, looking sharper, more sophisticated. "Yeah, third one," I said, leaning back in my leather chair, spinning an expensive pen, dedicated strictly to EV and hybrid diagnostics. "Told you, that's where the money is." "Wow, look at you, the visionary," she teased. "Does this mean I get to be a trophy wife when I come back?" "Damn right you do," I said, my voice softening. "You check your account?" I wired the transfer. I sent her a chunk of money on the first of every month. I knew she had a full ride, and I knew she was making good money freelancing for European design firms, but I insisted. It was my ritual. It was my way of telling her and proving to myself, your man has arrived. It wasn't a cakewalk. The expansion pissed off the old-school dealership cartels. I had guys slash tires at my lots. I had local goons try to shake me down for protection money. The old Chase would have grabbed a tire iron and gone to war. But this Chase hired corporate lawyers, installed 4K security nets, and leveraged his massive social media following to publicly shame the mobsters. I couldn't afford to get arrested. I couldn't have a record. I couldn't even risk a black eye. My life wasn't cheap anymore. It was Elena's, and I had to protect her investment. Chapter 15. The eve of the summit, the 3-year deadline was up. Carter Auto Group was a recognized regional powerhouse, and we had just launched a highly successful digital used car marketplace. I wasn't a billionaire yet, but I had enough leverage to wear a Tom Ford suit and stand in a room full of old money without feeling like a fraud. Elena was graduating. Her thesis project won gold in a European design expo, and rumor was that top-tier firms in London and Berlin were throwing blank checks at her. I panicked. To be honest, Europe had better architecture, better culture, better everything. If she wanted to stay, that night, I stared at the ceiling, insomniac. I opened iMessage, typed, "Do you want to stay in Paris?" and deleted it 5 times. I couldn't bring myself to hit send. My phone buzzed. A photo from Elena. It was a boarding pass. Destination, my city. Date, 3 days from now. A voice memo followed. I pressed play, and her voice, thick with emotion and a little laugh, filled the quiet room. "Chase, I turned them all down. Just like you didn't throw that punch in the alley for me. Did you buy a house yet? Because if not, I'm sleeping on your office floor." I shot out of bed. My heart was hammering a million miles a minute, just like it did when I was 18, looking at her in the rain. A house? I bought one a year ago. A penthouse downtown, 2 blocks from the top-tier architectural firm she had casually mentioned admiring. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. The interior was completely gutted and custom-built. I had paused a FaceTime call 2 years ago to screenshot a concept model she had pinned to her dorm wall, and I hired a luxury contractor to replicate it perfectly. I walked out to the balcony, the cold 3 m air hitting my face, and I gripped the railing. "Elena Vange, I love you," I screamed into the sleeping city. "Shut down there. People are trying to sleep," a neighbor yelled from a balcony above. I ducked back inside, laughing so hard my chest ached and tears pricked my eyes. My moon was coming back, but this time, she wasn't falling into the dirt. I had built the tower, and I was going to meet her in the sky. Chapter 16. The groom who didn't run on the day of her flight, I wore a tailored charcoal gray suit. It was the first time in my life I had dressed up like this for her. The tie felt like a noose, but I suffered through it. I had my barber clean up the edges of my hair, making sure I looked like a legitimate CEO and not a street brawler in a rented tux. Standing at the international arrivals gate, my palms were sweating profusely. I felt like a teenager waiting for prom. It had been 3 years. Did she look different than the pixelated girl on my phone? What if she smelled my past through the cologne and realized I was still just a mechanic from the wrong side of the tracks? "Mr. Carter, do you want to grab a coffee?" The board shows a 30-minute delay. Chloe, my assistant, offered gently. "No, I'm staying right here." I kept my eyes locked on the sliding glass doors. Finally, they parted. When she stepped through, the noise of the crowded airport muted into white noise. She wore a sleek camel trench coat, her short hair brushing her collarbone, pulling a silver rim of a suitcase. She pushed her sunglasses up on her head, her eyes scanning the sea of people holding signs. Then she found me. In that split second, A smile broke across her face, radiant, breathtaking, and completely uninhibited. She dropped the handle of her suitcase, completely ignoring the people around her, and ran. Her heels clicked frantically against the tile as she sprinted toward me. Chase, to hell with my CEO image. I surged forward, catching her midair as she jumped into my arms. The impact knocked me back a step, but I wrapped my arms around her waist, burying my face in her neck, holding her so tight I wanted to absorb her into my ribs. She smelled the same. Vanilla, expensive European laundry detergent, and that distinct, warm scent that just meant home. She was real, not a screen. You got heavy. She mumbled into the crook of my neck, her voice wet with tears. That's called muscle, babe. I choked out, rubbing her back. You feel better too. Guess all those croissants did their job. I missed you so much it physically hurt. Me too. God, me too. A few people walking by whistled and clapped. In my past life, I would have glared at them and told them to mind their own business. Today, I looked up, grinning like an absolute idiot, and flashed them a peace sign. Look all you want. That's my moon, and she flew all the way back to me. Chapter 17. Plagiarizing a masterpiece, I drove her back to the city in the Porsche Panamera I bought specifically to pick her up. Sitting in the passenger seat, she wasn't quiet like the girl from 3 years ago. She talked a mile a minute, telling me about Paris, about the arrogant French guy who kept trying to buy her coffee, and how she told him, I have a mechanic fiancé back in the States with a very short temper and a heavy wrench. I listened, driving with one hand, my other hand holding hers resting on the center console. The boulder that had been sitting on my chest for 3 years finally dissolved. She hadn't changed. Around me, she was still the girl who let her guard completely down. I pulled into the underground garage of the luxury high-rise. We took the private elevator to the top floor. I handed her a heavy brass key. Open it up. It's yours. Elena gave me a suspicious look, slid the key in, and pushed the door open. She stopped dead in her tracks. The first thing you saw was the massive wall of glass overlooking the river and the downtown skyline. But that wasn't what made her freeze. It was the interior. Wide plank oak floors, the asymmetrical floating bookshelf wall, the sunken conversation pit in the living room, and the glass-enclosed atrium studio branching off the balcony. She covered her mouth with both hands, her eyes instantly welling up. She walked inside as if in a trance, running her fingertips over the custom woodwork. This is the nest, my sophomore concept project. I only drew the renderings. I never published it. The only time it was ever out was when it was pinned to the corkboard behind your head during our FaceTime calls, I said, leaning against the doorframe, crossing my arms with a smug grin. I took a screenshot, hired the most expensive boutique firm in the city, and told them to build it to scale. A few details were blurry, so I had to guess. Like the kitchen. I figured you'd want an open concept island, so you could sit there and watch me cook. Elena spun around, tears spilling over her lashes. Chase Carter, are you a psychopath? You stalk my background props. You put on the screen. Anything on my screen is my territory to analyze. I walked over, wrapping my arms around her from behind, resting my chin on her head. So, what's the verdict, architect? If it's a teardown, I'll call the demo crew tomorrow. Don't you dare. She turned in my arms, rising on her tiptoes to press her lips to mine. It's perfect, especially the part where I get to watch you cook. That night, we kissed against the floor-to-ceiling glass. Outside was a sea of city lights. Inside was a sanctuary built just for us. I used to think the best I could offer her was a tarp over a leaky roof, but I had finally built her a nest worthy of her brilliance. Chapter 18. The garage proposal the day I proposed, the sky was a brilliant cloudless blue. I didn't take her to a Michelin star restaurant. I didn't do it in the penthouse. I drove her out to the edge of the city, to the original cinder block garage where I started the business. It wasn't a working mechanic shop anymore. I had converted it into an upscale, retro industrial lounge for our VIP clients. But I left the back corner exactly the way it used to be. The stained concrete floor, the dim pendant light, the stack of dry-rotted tires, and the cheap wooden stool where she used to sit and draw me. Elena looked around, surprised. What are we doing here? A little nostalgia tour? Yeah, nostalgia. I took her hand and led her to the corner. I reached behind the tires and pulled out a heavy, battered red Snap-on toolbox. Remember? 3 years ago, right in this exact spot. I told you to get lost. I thought I was a rat in the sewer, and you were the moon. I was terrified my dirt would get on you." Her eyes softened. "I remember. So what? I'm standing right here, aren't I?" "Yeah, you are." I popped the latches on the toolbox. There were no wrenches inside. No sakits. Inside was a bouquet of flowers. I had spent the last 2 weeks weaving by hand out of red copper automotive wiring and polished hex nuts. My fingers were sliced up from the sharp copper ends, but it was worth it. Nestled in the center of the metal petals was a ring. Not a massive, generic diamond. The band was cast out of brushed titanium, and the setting holding the brilliant cut diamond was shaped like a mechanical gear. Industrial engineering meets fine art. Mud meets the moon. I dropped to one knee. This time, there was no hesitation. No lingering self-hatred. I looked up at her, my shoulders pulled back. "Elena, in my last life, I owed you a future. In this one, I bled to buy it back. I'm not a poet. I don't know how to say the romantic stuff. But I know this. From the second you refused to get in that Audi in the rain, from the second you didn't run away in that dark alley, I swore to God that if I ever let you suffer again, I deserve to be struck by lightning. These flowers are copper. They aren't expensive, but they're never going to die. Just like me. Even if I get a little rusty, you can always polish me back to a shine. Elena Vance, will you marry this mechanic?" She pressed both hands over her mouth, sobbing. She was crying harder than the day she ripped up her Paris acceptance letter. But these were tears of absolute, unfiltered joy. She reached out, her hand shaking but her voice rock solid. "You idiot. You're not just a mechanic. You're my one and only client. Yes, I'll sign that contract for the rest of my life." I slid the titanium gear ring on her left ring finger. It fit perfectly. Epilogue. Moonlight 5 years later. On the day Carter Auto Group went public, ringing the bell at the New York Stock Exchange, I brought Elena with me. A reporter shoved a microphone in my face and asked, "Mr. Carter, the rumor is your entire entrepreneurial journey started just to win back your wife. Is that true?" I pulled Elena flush against my side, looking straight into the camera lens with a blinding smile. "Let me correct you," I said. "It wasn't to win her back. I was fully prepared to rot in the gutter. But the moon didn't care that I was dirty. She jumped out of the sky just to give me light. To make sure she didn't hit the ground, I had no choice but to grow into a tree tall enough to catch her. That night, back home, after we put our 3-year-old daughter to bed, I walked out to the balcony. Elena was sitting at her easel, painting under the glow of a warm lamp. I looked over her shoulder. It was a painting of a teenager. He wore a grease-stained Dickies shirt, a wrench in his hand, looking up from a grimy alleyway at a massive, brilliant moon. 18-year-old me. I wrapped my arms around her waist, resting my chin on her shoulder. "Why are you painting that guy again?" She put her brush down and turned her head to kiss my jaw. "Because I need you to remember, Chase Carter, no matter how high you fly, you'll always be the boy who fixed my bike in the rain and took a bottle to the head to keep me safe." I smiled, pulling her closer. Looking out at the bright, silver moon hanging over the city, my heart was completely at peace. It was true. I was a burnout, a street fighter, a mechanic with permanent grease under his nails. But none of that mattered anymore, because the moon had already fallen into my arms, and she was never going back to the sky. The end.